In this class, and we're looking at Psalm 3 to start out with today. We may also get into some of the other Psalms that follow, perhaps 4 as well, maybe 5 and 6. We'll just see how it goes. In this psalm, the psalmist is talking about many being against me. Now, those titles at the top of the Psalms were not on the Psalms originally, but they go back so far in time and so close to the originals that there is a good possibility that they're accurate. If that's the case, then this one was written by David during the time he was fleeing from his son Absalom. His son had rebelled against him. The relationship that David had with his son Absalom was a rocky relationship, to be sure. You can read about that in 2 Samuel chapters 13 through 19. We won't go back there and look at all the details. We'll focus more on the psalm today. But we want to get a little bit of a background idea as to what's going on here. First of all, you know that David had so many wives, and with that came all kinds of problems. Here's one of them. David had a daughter by the name of Tamar, and her half-brother Amnon raped her. But Absalom was her full brother, and so Absalom killed Amnon and then fled. Absalom fled, possibly thinking, and the context seems to indicate this, that his father would be upset and he would be in trouble. But in reality, David accepted that as justice. All right, he raped her, then you killed him. Okay, David accepted that. He was fine with that. But Absalom didn't understand that, and he didn't know that. And there is this strained communication, or lack of communication, straining this relationship between the two of them. The indications are in the text that David really did want to communicate with his son, but he didn't. And the indication in the text is that Absalom did want to come home, and eventually he did. He had to manipulate things a little bit, work through Joab, never a good idea. Joab was a cruel and selfish, mean, bitter, and violent person. He wasn't the guy to mess with. Absalom messed with the wrong guy when he messed with him. But through Joab, Absalom eventually came back into the kingdom. He went before his father, David, and David forgave him. And David gave that indication of that through a kiss. So Absalom comes in before the throne. He bows before his father, the king. And then King David bends over, kisses him there on top of the head probably, indicating to him that he was forgiven and that he is accepted by the king. And so everything seems to be normal, but still they seem to have trouble communicating with one another. It becomes evident as time goes on that David loves Absalom very, very much. Absalom is very important to him. And any of us who have children understand that, don't we? Our children, our sons and daughters are so important to us, and we love them very, very much. We'd do anything for them. Well, that's the kind of love that David had for his son, Absalom. But Absalom didn't love his dad the way his dad loved him. And Absalom was very ambitious. He was very power hungry. He was a glory seeker. He was so ambitious, in fact, for power, that he began to plot the overthrow of his father David. So Absalom developed his own little army, 2 Samuel chapter 15, and then he would go to the gates of the city where legal decisions would be made, and he would meet the people there, and he would in essence tell them, if I were the king, I would rule in your favor. And he'd tell that to everybody he could. And so he was politicking, wasn't he? He eventually developed a large following, and when he thought that he had enough people in Israel on his side to take the kingdom, he made his move. He rebelled against his father. His father was not quite ready for it, not quite ready to take a stand in the city of Jerusalem. And so David said to those loyal to him, we've got to retreat. I'm paraphrasing, of course, we've got to get out of here. Absalom and his men are coming. Imagine how much that would have broken David's heart just that fact alone, knowing that his son was rebelling against him in that way, knowing that his very own son, whom he loved so much, was wanting to take the kingdom away from him. So there's a lot of very personal, emotional pain involved in that situation. There was, in fact, a lot of personal, emotional pain in the life of David just over and over and over again. It's easy to think in terms of David being that great and mighty warrior who had so many victories given to him by God. It's easy to think in terms of him being a king and having all that power and having all that wealth and think, wow, what a life. His life was horrible for the most part, in many respects. Oh, he was blessed, and yes, he had those good times, but most of his life was suffering. And this was a part of that. And here's that emotional pain with the son he loves so much now rebelling against him. So the first night, David and his people are having to make their way across the Jordan River. The second night, they come to a place where they think they can take a stand, and they begin to make preparations for war, civil war in Israel between father and son. That's probably about the time David wrote this psalm, Psalm 3. And so as he is hurting, he is writing poetry. And sometimes when we write things down, it helps us to organize our thoughts. It helps us to meditate upon things that are so important to us and maybe even things that are hurting us. But in this case, not only is it David's poetry based on the situation he's in, but it's also something that was given to him by the Holy Spirit. The Spirit of the Lord spake by me, 2 Samuel 23 and verse 2, and his word was in my tongue. David was one who was inspired, and he wrote about 70, some say maybe 75 of these psalms by inspiration of the Holy Spirit, which were later all collected with these other psalms. But the title of this one says, A Psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son. And so this is not a good time for David when he writes this. Look at verses 1 and 2. Lord, and that's all caps, so you know what that means. That means Yahweh, or Jehovah, as it's sometimes translated. Lord, how they have increased who trouble me. And if it is indeed a reference to that time, then that is certainly a very true statement, isn't it? Because there are so many people in Israel, so many of his own people, that have risen up against him, so much so that they think they have a powerful enough army to take over the kingdom from David. Lord, how they have increased who trouble me. It is the case that you and I will find in this life that there are going to be people who are against us, who oppose us. Here's something you can do to make sure that you can make somebody mad and that they will oppose you. Simply do the right thing. That's it. You be the right kind of person. You serve God, you do the right thing, and I guarantee you, you'll have enemies. That's just the way that works, isn't it? Because when you do the right thing, people take that as a judgment and condemnation against them, and then they hate you for it. So it's just a natural thing that's going to happen. In David's situation, of course, he had a lot of enemies tied in with the fact that he is the ruler of a nation. And now in this case, an enemy from within his own family who's leading Israel in rebellion against him, and has put together a lot of people. Lord, how they have increased who trouble me. Many are they who rise up against me. Many are they who say of me, there is no help for him in God. So if we try to put ourselves in the place of David, then we would see that there are many people who want to kill him. Can you imagine being in that situation? Where you know there's a lot of people who want to kill you right now. And your son's a part of it. And on top of that, the people that want to kill you in this case are your own people, the Jewish people, the people over which he was legally the king. So it's a very difficult situation for him to have to process all of that and then to have to do the right things. We don't have time to look at it, but if you read those passages, you'll see that David really took a very humble approach throughout the whole thing. It's very impressive the way he handles the situation here. But other people were saying, look, this is so bad, there's no help for him in God. That's a bad situation when everybody's saying, not even God can help him. There's no way. You're talking about people who are probably Jews saying this, people of Israel saying this, because this is civil war in Israel. The people involved in this situation would have all been Jews. And so here are people who believed in God or had some sort of belief in God, and who were saying, hey, not even God can help you this time, David. That's not very encouraging, is it, when the people are saying that? That gives you some idea of the level of intensity of this problem that David is facing. You may not face a vast army led by your son coming after you like David did, but there may be times when your life is so filled with problems and so filled with suffering, there might be others saying, well, not even God can help him in that. He's in trouble. Well, that's not a very good statement to make, because God can do anything He wants to do. Nothing is too hard for God. God can and in fact will do anything that He wants to do. And so the statement, well, there's no help for him in God, not even God can help him in this, is a discouraging, depressing, negative lie. And David's going to point that out in the psalm here. And so he recognizes that God is actually the one that will help him. He's the one that David turns to, that is God. But you, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and the one who lifts up my head. I cried to the Lord with my voice, and He heard me from His holy hill. The word Selah added in there, most believe is a musical notation indicating a pause to be had there. Some say, well, you can even read it that way if you want to. As you're reading through the Psalms and you see the word Selah, you could pause and then go on. But I think it's a musical notation more than anything else. But you, Jehovah, are a shield for me. So everybody says, oh, not even God can help you. David says, nope, God, I know you will. I know you are my shield. I know you're the one that can protect me. My glory and the one who lifts up my head. I cried to the Lord with my voice, and He heard me from His holy hill. He heard my cry. And there's that confidence. Why is David confident that God can help him? Because God heard him, and because God has the power there to help him. All right, verse 5. David talks about having to sleep during that time. So you've got a lot of people coming after you, a lot of people want to kill you, a lot of things on your mind. When you have so much on your mind, how do you put that away so you can sleep? It can be difficult. David did this. I lay down and slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. It's so simple, isn't it? All these people want to kill me. Some are saying, well, look, not even God can help you. David's saying, I just went to sleep. And I woke up the next day. And the reason I woke up the next day is because God sustained me. I said, God is my shield. I said He can help me, and He did. I just went to sleep. I was still alive the next day. God took care of me. And he gives credit to God for sustaining him through the night in this very, very difficult and dangerous situation. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me all around. That's a powerful statement, isn't it? So you see, David's courage comes from his faith. The courage we have is not going to come from our own abilities, or it shouldn't. If you are courageous because you think you're the strongest person on planet Earth, then you're out of your mind. There's always somebody bigger, stronger, faster. If you're courageous because you just think you're so special, well, you're in big trouble. Because the reality is there's a whole lot of people that are stronger than you in so many ways. Why would you be courageous? Because you trust in God. Because you have God on your side. And that's the situation with David. And David recognized that. We'll see him bring that out in some of these Psalms as we go along through our study. And that is this fact. David knew that he was not in and of himself capable of meeting these challenges that came his way. He couldn't do it. His courage was not in his own abilities. Oh, I'm sure David was very athletic and very strong. If he had been around today, he might have been a professional athlete, I don't know. But his victories were ultimately given to him by God, weren't they? David was a mighty warrior. He was capable of doing amazing things in battle. No doubt he had good genetics, but that wasn't it, was it? Way beyond that. God was with him. And God gave him the strength, and God gave him victory in those battles. And he knew that God was going to protect him, and he had that confidence. So he said, look, you're saying not even God can help me here. There's all these people coming up against me. Many are they who rise up against me. But he says, I'm not going to be afraid of 10,000 people. 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me all around. You can bring it on because God's on my side. Not that he was wanting it, but that he was not afraid of it. Arise, O Lord. Save me, O my God. So there's the plea, and the plea needs to be there. So we don't go through life knowing that God has the power to help us, and then think, okay, he can help me. I don't ever have to talk to him about it. He knows what's going on. It's all good. We're fine. It's not quite that way, is it? Yes, he can help you, but he also wants you to tell him. He wants you to talk to him. He is your Father, and your Father wants to hear what you have to say, and he wants you to show the humility that's involved in asking for the help and not just taking it for granted. So don't ever take it for granted, though we have confidence in it. But we go before God humbly and we ask him, arise, O Lord, indicating God now coming to power to take action. Save me, O my God, for you have struck all my enemies on the cheekbone. You have broken the teeth of the ungodly. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessings is upon your people. And he's right. Salvation belongs to the Lord. This world is a very big world from the standpoint of its complexity, of all the people, over 8 billion souls, from the standpoint of the international politics, of wars, from the standpoint of crime and violence, from the standpoint of the ways in which so many people suffer. It's a big world. And you're really small. But God is on your side. That doesn't mean God's going to remove all suffering. He's never done that for anybody. He didn't do that for Moses. He didn't do that for Elijah. He didn't do that for Job, did he? He won't do that for you either. You will suffer, so will I. But God is there to help us through it. God will give us the strength that we need and the courage that we need to get through it, to deal with the pain, to work through the pain, to live with the pain. The pain we live with may be an emotional ache inside of our hearts that's deep and powerful and strong that affects the way we think every day. But you stay faithful to God. He will get you through one day at a time. And if you'll just do one day at a time with God, next thing you know, you've crossed the finish line. You got no more days, you're good. You're receiving your reward, your eternal reward with God. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing is upon your people. So David was confident that God hears the prayers of the righteous, that is, of those who are his people, those who serve him. You know, the situation with Absalom was really terrible, not just because Absalom and David were having trouble communicating. David wanted to talk to him and didn't. And Absalom wanted to come back and had to work through all kinds of methods to get back with his father. And then by that time, Absalom was ready to rebel. Maybe he had been all along. Just a very difficult situation. It's heartbreaking because you love your children so much. But David, when they were preparing to go out into battle against the forces of Absalom, first of all, he was getting ready to go out and fight, and his people said, no. You're too valuable to us. You come and stay back here in the city. And that says something about aging too, by the way, because even as David aged, he began to be in more and more danger as he went out to fight, even though God was giving him victories, and his people were saying, "Why, you're too valuable to it. Why don't you stay back here? And we'll go out and fight this battle." And David gave a command. Do you remember what the command was that he gave concerning his son Absalom. Don't kill him. Don't kill my son. Well, his son rebelled against him. Yeah, don't kill my son. I love him. Don't kill him. Well, I told you before that Joab was mean. He was. That man was about himself. He would do things for the king if that meant that he could continue to see the king have power that enabled him to have his power. And when the king gave commands he didn't like, he just did his own thing anyway, or killed the one that the king had asked to do the job. Joab was an awful person. Well, Joab is the captain of David's army, and he leads the forces into battle. David's forces win against Absalom's forces, and you know that Absalom's head had gotten caught in a tree as he was trying to flee. Killed a man that was helpless there, and killed the one that the king had said not to kill. Battery's dead. Killed the man. To King David that the victory is ours, that the victory has been won, but David knows, wait a minute, what else is going on here? Oh, your son Absalom is dead. So David mourns his son Absalom. Absalom, oh my son Absalom. He's mourning and weeping over this son that had rebelled against him. You see the human factor in this, don't you? David loved his son so much. Even though his son rebelled against him, David was so very, very upset when his son was killed. Don't kill my son, they did. Joab did. And now David's upset. He's mourning. You know about this Joab? Here's what he did. As if David's grief is not a big enough problem, Joab says to David, stop grieving. All the people see you grieving, you should be celebrating the victory. And the people need to see you celebrate the victory. Stop mourning over your son Absalom. Joab is the one who killed him. And so just a horrible time for David. And yet, as David was fleeing, before his son was killed, very likely he's writing this song, Psalm 3, indicating that God would be the one to get you through that situation. And so, even in very, very difficult times, David had this sort of trust in God. All right, you have any comments?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, sir.
You know, I often think about how difficult it would have been to be a ruler in that time, especially one with godly principles, because you had big families in order to ensure the succession of the throne. But then you knew at your death that there was a high probability that the intrigue would happen in the power vacuum, and your children would end up killing each other to reach the throne. And ultimately, even the mothers would be involved in some cases in assassinating the other children to make sure their child became the one that sat on the throne.
Sounds like
it's really difficult to have that love for those children and have those children that didn't know that was probably going to happen.
Well, you know, it's not God's original plan for a man to have hundreds of wives and all the children from all those wives. And so it's a situation that from the very beginning is doomed to have all kinds of problems and issues in it. But that is exactly right. It was a horrible situation. It was not a good thing. There were so many reasons why they would have those extra wives, and one of them had to do with sometimes when kings would make treaties with them, they would give them their daughters, and so that's how they would build them up. And in that day and time, in the minds of those ancient people, the king that had the most wives was obviously the most powerful king. You know, so there's a lot of things going on in that situation there, but it made a mess, didn't it? And it would have been hard for David even to know all of his children, but he certainly knew Absalom well, didn't he? And he loved him dearly. And so the whole situation is just a tragedy on every level, but you're right. What a hard situation for these people to be in, these families. It's not good, is it? All right, let's take a look at Second Samuel. How about Psalm 4? Psalm 4, hear me when I call. And we talked about this a few weeks ago, the fact that God does want us to call on Him even though He knows what our problems are. We mentioned that a moment ago. And that when we approach God, we're asking Him to hear us. Obviously, He can. He has the power to do so. But us asking Him shows a humility, doesn't it? And it shows that we're not taking prayer for granted. And many of the Psalms are essentially prayers put to poetry. But Psalm 4, verse 1, hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. And we have a song that we sing sometimes with those words in it. Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have relieved me in my distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer. You know, it's always a good idea when you're praying to God, especially about problems that you need His help with, to ask Him to listen to you, ask Him to hear you. You're not suggesting He can't, but you're showing that respect. You'll see David say, Psalm 31, bow down your ear to me. I want you to listen to me. Will you please hear me, God? And sometimes we need to show that kind of approach in our prayers. So if you're praying about a problem, approach God that way with that kind of humility. You'll praise Him in your prayers, God the Father, and then you'll ask God the Father to listen to you and to hear your prayer. But look what else David does here as he is expressing this prayer. Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness, calling on God and praising Him, and then recognizing what God has already done for him. You have relieved me in my distress. I'm not suggesting you've never helped me. And I want to recognize in this prayer that you have helped me. And so even when our hearts are hurting or our bodies are hurting and we need God's help, we want to recognize the blessings that God has placed within our lives. Even when we're hurting, see the gifts. Even when we're hurting, see the blessings. And when you are about to pray to God for help in your pain, tell Him thank you for what He's done for you. And see how much He's done for you. When you read the book of Lamentations, that book is filled with so much horror. Such a terrible description of a miserable time when a city has been destroyed. People are living in destruction. There's the burned out buildings. Walls have been knocked down. At night, the jackals are living in the city there, and they're howling at night and having this kind of a creepy sound through the night. And people are having to live in that, and they're having trouble finding water. They're having trouble finding food. And as Jeremiah writes the book of Lamentations, he looks out and he sees the families with the children, and the mothers are having trouble finding food for the children, and that breaks his heart. It's just a terrible situation. But then in Lamentations chapter 3, Jeremiah pauses from his description of the horrible destruction and talks about the great blessings that God has given to him and the great blessings that God has given even to these people. Because God could have completely wiped them out, and He didn't do it. He let them survive. And he says that God's blessings are new every morning. Jeremiah recognized that even in all that mess, there were still gifts from God. There were still blessings. And even as he describes the horror and asks God for help yet again, he recognizes what God has done for him. So remember that when you're hurting. And you will, and if you're not right now, you will, won't you? We all do. And sometimes the pain is intense. Sometimes it's a terrible, terrible situation we're in. But remember to see that God still has blessed you, hasn't He? There are still some good things that God has put within your life, and ultimately we understand this. God could have killed us for our sin, and He didn't do that. He gave us life. He allowed us to live. He allowed us to make our choices in life. He has blessed us with so many different things as we go through life: food, clothing, place to live, and in most cases, much more than that. So that even when we are suffering, we know, well, God's given me so many gifts. And sometimes, and I don't want to suggest I understand all this, but sometimes the suffering itself can be a gift. I'm not saying that about every situation. I'm not saying God makes you, suffer in horrible, horrible ways all the time. I'm not saying that. Sometimes you need a little pain in your life to help you refocus. Hebrews chapter 12. Sometimes maybe the blessing is the problem. Maybe you were too arrogant. You need to come back down to earth. Maybe you were losing your spiritual focus and you need to zero in on that eternal goal. And the suffering helped you to remember what was really important. So I'm not saying that's always going to be the case. But sometimes the blessing is the suffering. But even if it's not, you still have some blessings God has given you. One of which is, He will hear your prayers. So hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have relieved me in my distress. You've helped me. I understand that. But have mercy on me and hear my prayer. Now, I really do need help. Have mercy on me. Hear my prayer. And then he tells us the Lord will hear when I call to Him. Look at verse 2. How long, O you sons of men, will you turn my glory to shame? How long will you love worthlessness and seek falsehood? But know that the Lord has set apart for Himself him who is godly. The Lord will hear when I call to Him. So it's back to David having enemies. You people need to know this. God sees who the righteous are, the holy are. He set them apart. And so God's going to listen. The Lord will hear when I call to Him. Can you have that confidence? He referenced James 5:16, I think a couple of weeks ago. Fervent prayer of a righteous man is very effective. That's the Kevin paraphrase version. Is it? If you are righteous and you are praying fervently, does God hear your prayer? Yes. 100% guarantee. Absolute. No doubt. Yes. Will He do something about it? Yes. It may not be what you think He's going to do, but yes, He will. God hears your prayers. You can be guaranteed that that is the case. He is listening. The Lord will hear when I call to Him, David says. Verses 4 and following, he says, be angry and do not sin. Meditate within your heart on your bed and be still. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness and put your trust in the Lord. All right. Should you be a righteous person when you pray to God? Yeah. So be careful about your anger. Should you be angry with God when you suffer? Oh, be so very careful. Jeremiah was so upset about his suffering, wasn't he? He says to God, you're like an unreliable stream to me. Basically told God, you lied to me. Well, God didn't lie to him. Jeremiah simply misunderstood. And he was making accusations against God. Well, God was patient with that man and let him continue. Be careful what you say when you're suffering. Be careful about rising up in anger against God for suffering that occurs in your life. God is too big, too vast, too complicated, too powerful. He is unlimited in power, wisdom, knowledge, understanding for us to understand Him fully. I'm not saying we can't understand certain things from His creation. We'll talk about that in Psalm 19. I'm not saying we can't understand certain things about Him from His revelation. That's also Psalm 19. But the reality is this, there's so much more to Him than our pitiful little miniature minds have the ability to comprehend. And there is no way we can understand all this mess. There's no way. God made it perfect and we messed it up with the help of Satan. But there's no way we can understand all this mess. So we need to be very, very careful about what we say when we hurt and when we suffer. There is a book written by a man who had been the head of the Human Genome Project back in the 1990s, Francis Collins. I don't necessarily recommend the book. I don't like everything that's in it. But he was a man who was an atheist, and he went and got his PhD degree in mathematics. and then decided that wasn't really what he wanted to do, and so he went and got his PhD degree in some sort of medical field, oncology, I think it was, so that he could be a doctor. He decided that's what he wanted to do. As he studied, especially the oncology, he began to question his atheism. And then he remarked about this. This was really amazing to him. He was serving as a doctor over in North Carolina, and he said, here are these cancer patients I worked with, and they're in bad shape. And I can't tell you how many of them talked to me about how good God had been to them. That didn't make sense to him, because here they are suffering so terribly. And they're telling the doctor, oh, God's done this for me. God's so good to me. God helped me with this, and he's done this for me. And he was amazed. And that made him think even more. And with his studies, especially with genetics, the DNA, and with his understanding of mathematics, DNA, and then that kind of thing, it changed his mind. He became a theist, and he referred to mathematics as the language of God and genetics as the language of God. And when the human genome was entirely mapped and presented to the public, Bill Clinton was the president at that time, both he and Bill Clinton said, look at this genetic code. This is the language of God. So that, I don't know, we get into politics here. I'm just saying who the president is. But he said a good thing there. The language of God's right. So here were these people, though, that were suffering. And they said, God's been so good to me. You ever go visiting people that are in the hospital? And you think, well, man, I don't know what to say. I don't know how I'm going to help them. I'll do the best I can. And then you come away having been encouraged by them, the one that's suffering. That happens a lot, doesn't it? You see, some people, even in their pain and suffering, can see God. And they can see what God has done for them. And they can see that God will help them and that God's going to get them through it. And they have that confidence. And some people are so strong, they even know, look, if this thing, whatever it is, kills me, I'm good. I'm with God. It's all right. Whatever God wants to do here, I'm okay. So you can see the blessings even as you pray. You need to put your trust in the Lord. Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness, you've relieved me in my distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer. How long, O you sons of men, will you turn my glory to shame? How long will you love worthlessness and seek falsehood? But know that the Lord has set apart for himself him who is godly, and the Lord will hear when I call. God hears the prayers of the righteous. 100% guarantee. Be angry, do not sin. Meditate with your heart on your bed and be still. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness and put your trust in God. Put your trust in the Lord. Don't trust yourself because you're too weak. Trust God. Don't trust the doctors. We've got some terrible doctors in this country, but we got some great ones too. And we got some doctors that are very concerned about their patients and they're very knowledgeable, but it's too complicated. That's not always going to get you the answer either. I mean, I'm not saying don't listen to your doctor, listen to your doctor. But it's so complicated sometimes they can't figure it out even when they want to. And pain is so complicated sometimes you can't describe it in words. David tries in the Psalms. We'll see some of that as we go along. Poetry is a good way to try. But understand this, God knows what's happening. He understands the situation. And you can put your trust in Him. He'll help you. If you have the right attitude, you'll submit to Him. You've got to humbly submit to Him. You know, here's something we all need to learn in life, and that is total, full, complete, whole submission to God. None of self and all of thee. Give it up. Give up your ego, give up your glory seeking, give up your pride, give it all to God. Give yourself to God and pray that God will take you and use you how He wants to. Let Him take your life and use it as He wants. And when you are hurting, just give yourself up to God. No pride in this. God, why you do this to me? Me, I mean, I'm such a faithful servant and you did. No, 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 no. God, I know you've helped me before. I know you have blessed me. Here's the situation I'm in. I may not even know how to pray for it, but God, help me. And just give yourself to Him and let Him take care of it. Trust in Him fully. And verse 6, this is something we can relate to, I'm sure. There are many who say, who will show us any good? Lord, lift up the light of your countenance upon us. You've put gladness in my heart more than in the season that their grain and wine increased. I will both lie down in peace and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. Can you advance to the next slide there for me, please? It's me, obviously. I'm breaking everything today. Breaking the wireless and breaking the remote here. You've put gladness in my heart. You see that? You'll take care of me. Verse 7. You'll give me what I need. You'll help me through it. I can be glad. I can be happy. We're all going to hurt, some more than others. But what's coming next? What's next after this life? For the Christian, what do we see coming? Pain? No. Perfection? Sorrow? Loss? No. None of that. God wants you to live with Him in glory. Jesus the Christ wants you to live with Him in glory. He gave Himself for hours of torture and death so that you could have that. He wants you to have that perfection. And that's what's coming, is that glorious reward. It is coming, and there will be no more pain and no sorrow, no suffering, no crying. All the tears are going to be gone, aren't they? Someday. But we're here for now to endure, to grow stronger spiritually. And as your body is beaten up by life, and sometimes even as your heart and emotions are beaten up by life, remember to stay focused on God, because if you will do that and trust in Him, He'll get you through it. And you will grow stronger spiritually. And as you grow stronger spiritually, you'll have a better understanding of all this, and a better understanding of heaven, a better focus on heaven. You'll have a better understanding of the suffering of others, and a better understanding of how you can help other people as well. And even as your heart sometimes and as your body is being smashed and crushed by pain, the spirit inside of you is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And that will happen if you maintain your trust in God there. All right, we're running out of time here, but let me give an introduction to this next section here. There are a number of psalms that are called imprecatory. Now, I'm not one for big, specialized words. In fact, I really don't like them. But you might hear this sometime, and it simply means a psalm that is calling for God's judgment upon someone else. Oh, we got to be careful about that, don't we? There is a tendency, or an urge, I should say, in the righteous man to ask for God's justice and judgment to come down upon the wicked. And that's what David would do in some of his psalms. And so the atheist will say, oh, look how horrible this is. David is asking for God's judgment to come down upon these people. That's not how they'll frame it. They'll usually frame it like this. Look how vindictive David was. Look how vindictive God is. Look how vicious and cruel David was, and how vicious and cruel God is. How can you serve a God like that? Well, they don't understand justice. They don't understand love. They don't understand the God of the Bible. And they don't have the big picture in their minds. And sometimes they don't want to. But there are psalms in which David calls for God's judgment to come down upon the wicked. Let's be careful about that. David certainly did it. And he did it on he did it fairly often. And you don't get to see those today. So, Lord willing, we'll look at those next week.